Hi, and the first thing I want to say is thank you. Thank you for everything you've done, for your work, for your time here. As I was mentioning it to you, you've changed my life and you've changed the lives of many, many mothers and many parents through your work. And I just want to have this on tape, just telling you thank you for everything you've done. And I'm so deeply honored to have this time with you.
Well, thank you. And I'm delighted and honored to be here. Thank you for that. And I'm only passing on the benefits I had in working with Gordon Neufeld and believing that it was important to share that with other parents because I had the benefit of having him when my children were young. So thank you for your words.
I am a little bit jealous of that. We're gonna start it off. Here in Romania, society puts a lot of pressure on our kids to get into academics early, to start reading as soon as possible, to start doing maths. A couple of years ago, we started having a new requirement. So you used to start school at first grade. Now you're starting at grade 0, which is 1 extra year of school. When I started school, I learned how to write and read in school. Now kids are meant to go into school knowing this stuff. How much of this academic standards are actually helpful and truly benefit our kids, or is it just a push for the society? How do you see it?
Well, this is a great question, and I think this is one that a lot of parents struggle with, and the major push, particularly in North America and around the world, is that earlier is better. And if you're a developmentalist and you understand that children are going to take the time they need and that there's a time and a place for things to be introduced, like learning, like reading, like math, then your question is then, well, when is the best developmental window for these things? And what we know through the research over and over again, cross-cultural, right around the world, that there is a time when reading is important, and that is usually when the brain has sufficient development in the prefrontal cortex. And so around the age of 6 is when most kids would start more formal instruction and schooling. But before the age 6, it's really a play-based pedagogy and approach. And that we know that children develop in those first 6 years of life with 2 main drives, the drive for connection and the drive for play. And those 2 things have the most important shaping influence in a child. And not only is it shaping cognition, but their social skills, their emotional skills, and it sets them up to be a learner. Do they enjoy learning? Is learning something fun, or is it stress? Is it anxiety? A lot of kids, when they're pushed too fast, what the research shows is they're anxious about learning. They don't enjoy school. They think they're stupid. And when you push too much, children, you harm them actually in terms of the benefits they could get from later schooling. I always say that play builds the brains that schools use, but keep it there for 6 years, play-based, yeah.
I've had a lot of parents who they say, oh, but they're playing the whole day, they're not learning anything. And I remember reading this in one of the books, and play is a way of learning, isn't it?
It is a state of activated rest in the brain, and the problem-solving neural networks, they just connect. It is the way that the brain develops and shapes, and there's some research that shows that deprived of play, the neural networks do not integrate as robust, and you don't have the same neural networks. But the benefits of that show up in 3rd grade, 6th grade, later on. So you have to be patient to look and see how play builds the brains. But no, it's phenomenal. But it is endangered. Play is endangered.
It is endangered, yeah. I get that. We have a growing community of homeschooling in Romania, but parents often who do homeschooling choose this for their kids, they have a pushback. So they're seen as pariah, they're seen, there are a lot of voices, also authorities in Romania who say, look, this is not a healthy way for your child. What's your take on that? And what does science say about those kids who are held back, trying to doing the academics a different way?
Yeah. Well, in North America, it's very common for parents to choose their path this way as long as they're answering to educational outcomes. So the research from that shows that children who have a good home environment and have opportunity for connection, it's a safe home environment, exposure to people and things and experiences, they actually do very well. In fact, they're, as an academic, as a tenured academic, I could always tell who were the homeschool kids in my...
Really?
Yeah, and I'd be like, why is that student so different? They had questions, they were interested, they were engaged. They weren't there just to get a ticket. They wanted to be educated. So homeschooling, and of course this is culturally based. And so in Europe, there would be different beliefs and systems around that. And so there's a cultural piece to that. However, when you look at the research, if we have a good home environment, inquiry-based learning, play-based learning, children grow best in the context when they're attached to the people who are responsible for them. So if that's a teacher, daycare provider, a parent, then those conditions are the best for a child to learn. And so, no, homeschooling it's not holding your child back in social skills.
It's not a risk, it's not a gamble, is it?
No, and it's certainly in North America, it isn't seen as detrimental. It's seen actually, and often is as a privilege, because to be able to offer that to your child means that the parent would have resources to do that. And so, I know many homeschool kids, they're phenomenal, yeah.
One of the reasons some parents who they have the possibility of staying back home with their kids, but they still choose to send their kids to nurseries or kindergartens. And the answer most of the times that I get is that they're afraid they won't be able to socialize later on, or they won't be able to integrate into society. Is that a risk? Is that a true fear, or is it just something we're taught? Or
it's leftover beliefs from a generation and parenting practices that don't line up with developmental science anymore. And essentially the idea is that you have to teach a child how to be mature. You have to put them around another 3-year-old in order to teach the 3-year-old how to be an adult. Well, if you look at 3-year-olds, they're not very civil, they're not very social, they're not very kind to each other. They are not your best socializing agents by far. And you don't train a child to be mature. You actually have to put them in the context with, play, with good connections with adults who then help raise them. And the dynamics from inside of the child are what help grow them. So you need good conditions. The biggest regret that I actually have in writing Rest, Play, Grow is that I took out a chapter because my publisher said, your book's too long. I actually removed 3 chapters. And the one chapter was called The Myth of Socialization, Why Getting Along is Overrated. And I thought, well, Gordon Neufeld and Deborah MacNamara had written Hold On to Your Kids. So I thought, does it need to be said again? I was completely wrong. It does need to be said. So I've committed myself to writing that chapter, and I'm just going to release it. The Myth of Socialization, because people still believe that you have to put immature kids around immature kids, and then that's how they learn to be mature. You don't learn how to be mature, and certainly not from a child who's equally mature as you. So no, in fact, you court peer orientation, where they're going to be more likely to clone and fuse and copy each other and form a pack where the adults become disoriented, and they're not influenced by their adults anymore. They're not oriented around their adults anymore. So it is actually taking development offline if you court too much peer interaction. Yeah.
I cannot wait for that. I have to tell you. Many parents, they confuse attachment, parenting, and connection with a child always saying yes, or executing what the parent says. So I've got people who come and say, look, I've collected the child, but they're still saying no. Like, this doesn't work. Should good attachment and good connection actually be translated in an executing child and an yes man, or is it?
Yeah. Well, as Gordon Neufeld says, you need 2 invitations. You need an invitation for attachment, an invitation to become your own self. And so as soon as your attachment starts to grow a separate self, usually by the time of 2 and 3, a child will start to say, me do, I do it myself, and no. And that's because your child is starting to grow as a separate self. So they've got their own ideas, their wants, and their wishes. They feel secure enough, safe enough with you that they get to have their own mind. I actually think that's a wonderful thing. No, attachment doesn't always mean agreement, and we shouldn't want that. What we should want is for our children to become their own persons with their own ideas, and that for attachment to be able to help us find a way to hold on to our kids and get through those impasses when we really are on different sides.
We're on the same team.
We're on the same team, but you know, you don't want your child to be a clone of you. You want them to be their own self. And so there has to be some room to stretch to who your child is. When I think about my kids, I think, well, where did that come from? That doesn't come from your father and I, but I think, isn't that beautiful that it didn't? It's your own growth and development, yeah. So yeah, so no worry if they don't always follow you.
Lucky kids, those of yours, to have you as a mother.
No, thank you.
Last year, we've added a new member to our family. I mean, 1.5 years ago. And one of my biggest fears was the relationship between them and how that is going to develop. What role am I going to play in it? And when my youngest was about 1 year old, my daughter started having a really, really difficult time.
Yeah.
And I've realized the more I reacted, the worse it was going. How does a true dynamic, a real dynamic, a healthy dynamic look like? Are they supposed to love each other because they're brothers right from the start? Because that's what the answer I got. Oh, they should love each other. They're the same blood. And I'm like, yeah, well.
Nothing will go wrong with that at all. Oh my goodness. I mean, you know, when you think about a family and you think as you add more people to that family, whether it's a biological, you know, or not biological sibling, I mean, it's all about adapting and taking a new shape as a family. And so there's lacks and losses that need to be felt, and some sadness there that things have been felt, you know, that are present. And there's also the connections that are made and the attachment that is built over time. And so as parents, we can facilitate that attachment between the siblings. Of course, they're going to find their way with that as well. And so the focus would be on matchmaking and making sure that we're ordering them in cascading care. You know, I was the eldest of 5 kids, and my mother was so brilliant. She didn't read a book, she didn't do any of that stuff, but she would say to me, you know, you're the eldest and you get to stay up 15 minutes longer than your siblings. But she also expected me then, well, you're the eldest, and so I need you to take care. And so the most important thing that we do with our kids is we don't treat them as equals. We put them in cascading care. You're the eldest, you got the youngest, and hopefully the youngest has a pet or something to take care
of. A teddy bear or something.
And so as soon as you put them in that cascading care, what you're doing is you're drawing out the relational instincts and the caring. And so, yes, will there be some disgruntled feelings? Yes, you know, send them back. I just want you to myself. Well, any child who's really well attached to you doesn't want to share, but you take the lead. And no, this is part of the family. This is, you know, I think the greatest gifts my parents actually ever gave me were my 4 sisters. But I didn't always feel that way.
They didn't feel, I get goosebumps because last night my daughter was, as she was falling asleep, and we were co-sleeping, right? Yeah. So we were sharing the bed, and I was just snuggling with her. She said, you know, Mama, I really don't like Ez. She's like, but I would really, really want one more sibling. And I'm like, okay, I get it.
That's why you never let the preschoolers make decisions.
And I'm like, okay, it's a good news there. Somewhere
we're
behind
halfway there.
Yeah, exactly.
Just take the lead. That's all you got to do.
Speaking about sleep and a time to relax as a family, a tricky subject here for new parents especially is sleep. So we've got a lot of information from 60s, 70s, 80s of especially men who have never put a baby to sleep before, that we're supposed to train our kids to sleep and teach our kids to sleep through methods that either encourage misattuning to our kids, so not listening to their cries, not comforting them when they're crying, or just closing the door behind us and never coming back until the next morning. What does the science say, and what does attachment science say about sleep training methods?
Yeah, this is a hot topic in North America as well. And everyone will use the science to suggest and support their own point of view. Essentially what happens though is that when you use separation and detachment from a child, to get them to sleep, whether they have to cry it out, they have to self-soothe, they have to self-regulate themselves. Like there's all these types of language that we use around basically a child having to grow up and feel secure while not being with the people who are responsible for them. What you do and what those methods did, the verberizing method, the cry it out method, was they essentially say to the child that no one's coming. Crying is a separation distress response. And so when you leave them to cry, it basically communicates nobody's coming, and the child falls to sleep out of emotional defense rather than rest. The big question that we should be asking ourselves is, how do I bring my child to rest so that sleep is possible? The body knows what to do with rest. The child needs to come. The body knows how to get the child to sleep. We need to get the child to rest. They are not built for disconnection. We do need to sleep, and we do need to take the lead on what sleep looks like. But anyone who offers and suggests that there's only one method to do that, or a sleep prescription, dumbs down parents, doesn't respect the child-adult relationship. How I did this with both of my children looked very different because I was in different places, and as a parent, I had different requirements around sleep. It's important everybody sleeps, but don't use the biggest card, which is push their brain into a shut-off mode because of separation distress. That has ripple effects. If parents have done that, it's okay. Go back. It's okay. Development is kind. Attachment is till they lure you in the grave. So just go back, offer more connection and closeness at a time when there's the most separation, even if they don't seem to be needing it. Mm-hmm. But yes, our sleep training industry was not set up to favor relationships. Yeah.
I just get goosebumps, and I'm trying to get this message as far and wide as possible. When my oldest was around 6 months old and we started, weaning her into solids, I remember reading the books, right? So there should be sitting in the chair, no distractions, 4 grams of protein, 6 grams of carbs, or something around those lines. And I remember bringing to the table nothing else but my anxiety. So I remember at one point, I felt like my kid could not eat because of me, because of all the expectations I've had, because of all the pressure I was putting. So what is it that today's world misses out when it comes to food and nourishment?
Yes. And I mean, this question is dear to my heart. It was a question that I brought to Gordon Neufeld when I was interning with him. What do I do with my picky eater? And the response he gave was not a response to answer that question. He put the focus back on relationship. And so after about 10 years of research, what I realize is that our relationship with food is broken. We put the emphasis on food. The fact that you're focusing on how much protein or carbohydrates, that your emotions are one of alarm around food. Food was supposed to be something to be enjoyed. It is a gift. It is a medium through which we enact attachment. And so the missing piece in our feeding habits is that we don't understand that children are most receptive to people being fed by people they're attached to. And so if we focus on the relationship, we increase the receptivity, our children are going to have their own minds. They do go from being just simply fed to becoming an eater. So they'll tell you, they have preferences. Our job is to show up and be the provider, but the emotions that we bring to the table, the alarm that we have now about the food is really problematic, and it's interfering in our feeding relationship. So I would say, in short, if your focus is on food only, then you've got to shift hopefully into some more relationship ideas. And out of all the research, if I could just sum it up to one sentence, it would be to gather your children first, gather them, collect them, engage them, and then eat. It's not just simply eating together. Don't put the food first.
It's not a process. It's not something to tick off a table, right?
No, it's not. Food is fuel. It's engage in relationship, and then from that place of relationship, feed. That's when they're most receptive.
I remember going on a date with my husband, right? One of our first dates, and he was at a table. We were having dinner, and I remembered the connection. And at one point, I was remembering that, and I was, why are we not putting that with our kids?
Exactly.
Like it didn't matter what we were eating.
Exactly.
I don't even remember the taste of the food, but it's the emotion, the connection that was happening. And then I just realized, okay, this is another topic that the society is not
broken.
It's
Yeah.
broken, yeah, and we need to work on it. Last but not least, if there's one message you would send to our parents and our community out there about anything about parenting, and what would it be?
Yeah. I think it would be an apology and a message of hope. And the apology would be that they are trying to raise their children in a day and age that doesn't honor parents, in the sense that we each come with emotions and instincts that help us raise our children. And we've been doing this since time immemorial. And so now we have so many messages to parents. You're going to traumatize your kids, or do this or this and this. And I think we don't empower parents. We don't convey that they are the answer. We continue to try to say to parents, here are all the answers, remember all these. And the biggest message is you are enough. You have what your child needs. You're going to make mistakes. Sit and reflect on what you didn't like yourself doing, and endeavor to show up differently the next day. And you will grow as a parent, but the answers are inside of you if you have patience and courage to look at what you're not doing well. It's certainly been my journey as a parent, and I'm still learning and still growing as my children are now adults. And how do I do an adult relationship? And the biggest hope, of course, is that they invite you back into their lives. Now that they don't even need me, the invitation is there. Yeah,
intimacy, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, just take a breath. Realize that nature set you up here to be successful. Pay attention to what you need to, and it's okay if what you're doing might look a little bit differently from what everybody else is doing. In fact, I dare say that would probably be the best path for you.
I love that. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. It's so lovely to be with you. Yeah.
Thank you.